Hello, all you crafty people out there. I'm so excited to start doing these videos for you with my kits. They're going to feature my kits that I make. They are called Crafty Creatures, and this is the first one. And we're going to open it and walk through it, and I'm going to show you how to sew it up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can follow along with all the different types of kits I'm making, and you can get updates on new ones. All right, so let's start with this guy. This is my Piggy kit. He's been requested a lot, and he's kind of a new kit for me. All the kits come in these great packages. Everything's included except for your stuffing and your hoop. So let me take out what is in here. I have put a color picture so you can see the finished product, so you can use that as a guide. And then we're gonna open him up, and he comes with a wonderful little guide to how to sew him. It has the colors on there and everything, the types of threads. If you run out of thread because you mess up or something, you can always go to any craft store. It's standard DMC floss. It also has a guide as to the most complicated way to stitch him, but all these kits can be done but with a running stitch. Because they are printed, let me open him up, because they're printed with the color of thread that they should be sewn in. And so if you just do a running stitch, even if the printing shows through, it's going to look great. And these are the threads that come, enough thread to finish the kit. And there's a needle, nice sharp needle with a big eye. And there's a background. This guy is a Piggy background. And then there's another paper in there that has my stitching, and they're just examples of different stitches that I use in my various kits. For instance, this one's a very simple stitched kit, so there's only 3 stitches you'd use in that, but otherwise you can use it for your other sewing needs. So let's get started.
So we have 2 parts to the hoop. We have a top and a bottom. The top part has the hardware, and the bottom is just a plain hoop. The bottom has a lip on it, and the lip is going to go down on the table because it gets in the way when you're putting the stuff together. And you're going to put your fabric on top of the hoop where you're wanting to work. And then you're going to take your top part and loosen the screw a little bit and place the top part onto the bottom part to hold it in kind of like a drum. And you want to make sure that your piece of fabric is tight like a drum. It helps to tighten the screw after you do this so that it stays tight while you're sewing, and it helps to keep it tightened as you're sewing and pull the fabric tight as you're sewing to keep your stitches nice and taut. So we're going to start by threading our needle, and I'm going to show you a quick little quilter's knot. It's a great little knot. We're going to make a circle with our thread and match the tail end and the needle and point them at each other. And we're going to grab the tail with the needle hand. We're going to wind it around the needle a couple of times, 2 or 3 times. We're going to grab the wind on the needle, push the needle through and all the way up while holding the wind, and you have what's called a quilter's knot. It's a great little knot to start. You're going to start with your medium colored pink, and you're going to do all the little fur marks or the line marks all over the face and the body of the pig. Make sure you do these in a line or in clusters and not too far from each other, or you're going to be wasting a lot of thread. But it's a fun little stitch to do, very easy for beginners, good place to start your project. And as you can see, you're just going to keep doing them throughout the whole pig, and it just adds tons of texture to your animal. Now we're going to head over to the lines or the outlines of the animal. These are very important, especially when you're finishing the pig. We're doing what's called a split stitch. You go up, you take a stitch, you go past, you take a stitch past this stitch, and then you go back down in the middle of the last stitch going backwards. It's in splitting the stitch open. That's why it's called a split stitch. So again, go past, come up past the last stitch and go down in the middle of the stitch to make your split stitch. So I've just run out of thread, so I'm going to show you how to quit and make the knot. You take your needle off, or you cut your needle. you're going to split your pieces of thread in half, and you're just going to tie a simple double knot on the back. This is one way to make a knot, and I find especially for children this is a great way to do it. Once you tie your double knot, you want to make sure that you cut the threads a little shorter or they get in the way of your sewing. So we're going to continue going around, and when you come to a thing like an ear or a foot or something in the way, you're going to finish your edge stitch at the point of the ear and then skip underneath the ear and just keep going. So now we're going to do the belly button. We're going to use that same medium pink, and we're going to do the split stitch again. This time the split stitch is going to be very small because we're doing a tight little circle. So you just do tight, smaller stitches all the way around and add a cute little spiral belly button. Now we're going to go with our dark pink, or I like to call it melon pink. It just reminds me of watermelon a little bit. And go around with your split stitch around the feet and the nose and the ears and the nose nostrils, which are little spirals as well. So you're going to do those just like the belly button. So we're going to just have some fun doing that and get all of the dark pink finished up. When you're doing the feet and the nose and the ears, you're going to want to cut your thread in between each area because you don't want long pieces of string going between them. So to do this, you're going to finish your foot and you're going to cut your thread about a finger's length is what I usually do. And then again, split it open and tie it like a double knot. Just like your shoe, as I tell kids, and then cut those threads short so that they don't get in your way. But yes, you do want to cut in between each object because the long strings get in the way and they can look ugly after you make your animal into a stuffed animal. For around the ears, you want to go all the way around the ear and then come back. The ears are folded over, so to show that they're folded over with your string, you're going to come back and go around that little triangle there and finish your ears off like that. So now we're going to do the fill stitch on the eyeballs. We're going to use black thread. What you want to do is you want to make a straight line. So I start in the middle of the shape and I go up on the top or the bottom of the shape. And you're going to come down straight to the bottom. And the reason you start in the middle is because to make a straight line, it's easier to see a straight line on the middle of a shape that's curved than the edge of the shape. So you're going to go up and down right next to, on the outside edge of the shape, right next to the lines that you made previously. And you're going to continue doing that all the way to this one side of the eye. Then once you're done with that side, you're going to go back to the middle and you're going to repeat yourself and fill in the rest of the eye. You also want to, just like the feet and the ears and the nose, you want to cut your thread in between doing an eye because that black thread on the back will possibly show through once you get your piggy stuffed. Now we're going to do the belly, and it's just like the fur marks, but these just go in circular patterns, and we're going to use the lightest pink. It almost looks like a white, but it really is a very, very light pink. And we're going to go around and do a circle. I just followed the circle around and around and around. It was a little dizzying, but it seemed to save the thread the best way. And then we're going to do the same thing as with the body. We're going to do the outline stitch of the belly in that same light pink in a split stitch. You have a couple of options for the tie. I'm going to take my turquoise color and I'm going to fill in, do a fill stitch for all the dark squares on the little tie, the gingham tie. You can also just simply do the lines on the tie, but I'm going to fill in the squares and then go back and do what's called a back stitch on the lines, which is just meeting from point to point. So I'm going to go from the point of the square to the point of the square, back and forth until you cover every line on the tie. But like I said, you can do it in various ways. You don't have to cover every line. You can just do straight lines or skip lines. This great thing about gingham is that you can put texture any way you want. So now we're done with him. We're going to take the hoop off and we're going to start to stuff him. He turned out really cute, but he's going to be even cuter when we stuff him. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to flip him over and we're going to mark our line to help us with our stitching. I do a 5/8 of an inch, which is a little bit more than a 1/2 of an inch. And I eyeball it, but you can also use a measuring tape all the way around. And I mark with a pencil lightly all the way around. In the corners, you want to just kind of ease and not have hard corners because you're hand stitching this and it's a lot easier to have a soft ease. Then you're going to put your backing fabric down, right side up, your Piggy right side up onto the backing fabric, and then you're going to pin it. So it's right sides together and the wrong side will be showing out at this point. So you're going to pin him just to hold it in place. I put 4 pins or so. And you're going to want to mark an opening for the stuffing. This is to help you remember to not close your animal up. So I like to mark it on a straight area. Bottoms or sides of animals are usually the best because when we stitch them up, they tend to be easier on a straight area. So I'm going to mark about a 2 to 3 inch spot where I'm going to stitch in between those. So that's in between that, I'm not going to stitch at all. So we're going to go up all the way. I'm going to start stitching on the inside of the line, not on the line, on the inside of the line. That way the line isn't showing at all. And I'm going to take a running stitch, which is an up and down stitch. You can use a hoop if you need to, but I find it easier. Actually, I do what's called a running stitch where I put a lot of fabric on my needle. It's kind of a gathered running stitch. You don't want to gather it, but you want to make it flat. So you can see I put a bunch of fabric on my needle, little tiny stitches. You want them close together, small stitches up and down, all the way around. You close together so that the stuffing won't pop out later on. So go all the way around your animal, and then we're going to start cutting them out and getting ready to stuff. So at the end, you're going to make a little knot. To make a knot, you want to take a stitch and then a second stitch right at the end just to secure it. And then in the second stitch, you're going to make a loop and you're going to put your needle through the loop, and that makes a knot, and then you're going to cut that off. Let's cut the excess fabric off. We don't need all that excess fabric when we turn them. It gets in the way. So we're going to cut it about 1/4 inch from your stitching. If you go any closer, you have a possibility of cutting your stitching. You don't want to do that. We're going to cut all the way around 1/4 inch away, and then we're going to clip him. The clipping is the curves. You only really have to clip curves because the curve will pinch and look gathered if you turn him and don't clip. And I'm going to turn him with the help of a stick, like a chopstick or a pencil, and I'm going to get all the edges flattened out or pushed out so that you can see all the edges before you stuff. And then we're going to add stuffing. You want to add a little bit of stuffing at a time and try to get it into all the corners and the tops, like the head and things, before you add more stuffing. And I'm using my chopstick to help push it into the corners, like into the ear corners and places like that. So stuff him up and get him ready to be sewn up on the bottom. Now we're going to pin this bottom part. He's nice and stuffed, fully stuffed. We're going to pin the folded pieces of opening up so that it's easier to sew. I'm going to take a pin and squeeze it with my thumb and my finger, and I'm going to pin it closed. And then we're going to start on one corner. I like to start a little bit in from where I stitch because the stitching tends to open up a little bit as I'm stuffing it. So just to secure it, I start stitching kind of in a little bit, and there's two ways to stitch. One is just to pinch it and go through the front to the back, and that is called a whip stitch. So you go through the front to the back and you just keep doing that over and over again. Or you can do what's called a ladder stitch, which is going in the curve, in the fold of the front and then next to the fold of the back, and when you pull it tight, it brings the fabric together. So I'm going to do that all the way along the opening, past the stitches I had already made, just so it's very secure. And then I'm going to put a little knot in it. When you knot, you do the same thing. You do a little stitch, you go through your loop, and then to end it, you want to put your needle in and out through the stuffing and cut it there so that you have a string and you're not cutting it at the knot, because if you cut it at the knot, it will come out. And he is all done. So let's look at him.
And here he is finished. Let me show you him. He's so cute and fluffy and sweet. And I loved making him. I hope you do. If you have any problems making him, let me know. I will be happy to answer any questions. You can subscribe to my link down below. You can order my kits at ruthtillmandesigns.com. And please let me know how you're doing. I'd love to hear back from you.